She put her hand inside the worn apron and felt the cold metal she had been carrying for 18 years. In front of her, the room full of relatives dressed in black waited in silence. Like someone waiting for a sentence, a man in a suit pointed his finger and shouted, "This woman is a thief! She stole this key from our family and now has the nerve to show up here on the day of the reading of the will." Yolanda did not answer. She walked slowly to the dark wooden door at the back of the office, the one that no one had ever managed to open after the death of the old farmer. She fitted the key into the rusty lock. She turned it once, then again, and when the door gave way with a dry click, the silence of the room turned into crying, astonishment, and shame. To understand how a simple key kept for almost 20 years would reveal the greatest secret of that farm, we need to go back in time, to a foggy morning in Villa dos Cipes, when Yolanda was still just an orphan girl trying to survive. If this story touches you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments where you are watching from. Now come with me, and I will tell you this story. Yolanda was 9 years old when she lost her parents in a flood that swept away the family's small cassava plantation with no close relatives. She was taken by the neighbors to the nearest farm, a large property of coffee and cattle belonging to a man called Su Diodato, a widower with no children, known in the region for his hard hand in business and his soft heart for those who suffered. "She can stay," he said, looking at the barefoot girl standing in the middle of the yard. "She will work in the kitchen. She will eat at my table and she will sleep under my roof. No one here goes hungry as long as I have strength to work." The years passed slowly in that large house with a long veranda. Yolanda learned to sew, to tend the garter, to read the few books that existed on the office shelf. Su Diodato, who never had children, began to see in her something that his own nephews had never given him. Sincere company, with no interest in his land or his money. The nephew of the old farmer, a man called Norberto, lived in the city and only appeared at the farm when he needed loans. His mother, Donna Almarinda, Diodato's sister, made a point of reminding everyone that that land would be the family's by right of blood and not of a girl picked up from the mud. Yolanda heard these comments in silence. She did not argue, say, work. And at night, when she finished her tasks, she sat on the veranda next to the old farmer, who told her stories of his youth, of the wife he had lost early, of the dreams he had for that land. "One day, girlie," he would say, looking at the horizon, "this farm will need someone who truly loves it, not someone who only wants to sell it." It was on one of those nights that Yolanda met Tarcesio, the son of a neighboring farmhand, a young man with a serious look and calloused hands, who came to deliver seeds and ended up staying to talk until the sun set. The friendship between the two grew slowly, as true things usually grow, without haste and without empty promises. When Yolanda turned 17, Su Diodato fell ill. The cough that began as a simple winter cold turned into something more serious, and the village doctor shook his head as he left the room. Norberto and Donna Almarinda began to appear more frequently, always asking about documents, about deeds, about what would be done with the farm. One night, already weak, the old farmer called Yolanda to his room. He took from under the pillow a small iron key, dark wheat thyme, and placed it in the palm of her hand. "This key opens the door of my old office, the one that has been locked since my wife died. Inside there is a document that only you should find when the right time comes. Do not let anyone take this key from you. Listen carefully, not if they ask nicely, not if they ask with anger. Promise, I promise, Su Diodato," she answered with a choked voice. "Then keep this key as if you were keeping your own life, because one day it will open much more than a door." 3 days later, Su Diodato died in his sleep, and even before the funeral was over, Donna Almarinda was already asking, between one handkerchief and another, where the farm documents were kept. In the previous chapter, we saw how Yolanda received from the old farmer a key and a promise, moments before he passed away. Now, that promise would be put to the test. The reading of the will took place on a cold afternoon in the main room of the farm. The document found by the family lawyer, kept in an ordinary drawer of the bedroom, left the property to Norberto as the only living relative by bloodline. There was no mention of Yolanda. Not a single word. "This is all there is," announced the lawyer, closing the folder. Yolanda felt the ground give way under her feet, but not because of the land she would not receive. She felt it because of the certainty that another document existed, hidden behind that locked door, and that she would never have the chance to prove it if she handed over the key. Donna Almarinda did not take long to notice the small metal object hanging from the cord that Yolanda wore around her neck, hidden under her blouse. "What key is that you are carrying, girl?" "My brother kept many keys in this house. Hand it over here, since now everything belongs to our family. This key was his, and he gave it to me before he died." Yolanda answered firmly, "I will not hand it over." What followed were months of humiliation. Norberto, now the legal owner of the farm, expelled Yolanda from the room she had occupied for 8 years and sent her to sleep in the old tool shed. He reduced her food, increased her tasks, and several times tried, without success, to snatch the key by force. "You are nothing but a foundling, a street girl that my uncle took in out of pity," he said one morning, holding her arm tightly. "This key is not yours. Nothing here is yours." It was Tarcisio who appeared at that moment, crossing the yard with quick steps, and placed himself between the two. "Let go of her arm right now," he said, in a low and dangerous voice. "And if you touch her again, you will have to answer to me, and to all the neighbors who know the kind of man you are." Norberto stepped back, but the warning did not prevent that. Weeks later, Yolanda was expelled from the property for good, publicly accused of theft, without proof, just to justify her departure before the village. She took with her only a bundle of clothes, some saved coins, and the key fastened around her neck like a second heart. It was Tarcisio who received her in his own family's house, offering honest work in sewing and tending the garden, asking for nothing in return except her sincere company. The years that followed were of silent reconstruction. Yolanda worked, saved, learned the trade of seamstress more deeply, and little by little earned respect in the neighborhood. Moretan, 11 messengers from Donna Almarinda appeared, offering money for the key, claiming that it only had sentimental value, nothing more. Yolanda always refused. "A promise made to someone who has already passed is worth more than any money," she would say, keeping the object even deeper in the pocket of her apron. It was during one of those visits of refusal that Tarcisio, already a grown man, gathered the courage to say what he had felt for years. "Yolanda, I know that your life is turned toward this promise, and I respect that more than you imagine, but I want you to know that, key or no key inheritance, or no inheritance, I choose to stay by your side. I always chose." She smiled, for the first time in a long while without weight on her shoulders, and allowed that patient love to finally find space in her tired heart. In the previous chapter, Yolanda was expelled from the farm, but she never gave up the key or the promise made to the man who had welcomed her as a daughter. Now, 18 years after that night in the old farmer's room, an unexpected call would bring Yolanda back. The farm, under Norberto's command, had fallen into deep debt. Bad decisions, gambling, and lack of care for the land led the property to a judicial auction scheduled for the end of the year. It was a former employee of the house, still loyal to the memory of Su Diodato, who sought out Yolanda in the neighboring village, telling her the situation and bringing news that would change everything. A retired lawyer, going through old documents of the deceased farmer, had found a letter addressed to a notary of the region, mentioning a second will kept in a safe place inside the house itself. Yolanda did not hesitate. Together with Tarcisio, now her husband, she returned to the farm on the same day that the family was gathering to discuss the hurried sale of the property. Before the auction took everything away with nothing in return. It was there, in front of Norberto, Dana, Almarenda, and the family lawyer, that Yolanda took from the apron the small iron key, the same one she had been carrying for almost 20 years. "You said at the time that I was a thief for keeping this," she said in a firm voice, without anger, only the tiredness of so much silence kept. "Today, I am going to prove that this key was never a theft. It was a promise, She walked to the locked door of the old office, the same one that no one had managed or dared to open since the death of the old farmer. The key entered the rusty lock, turned with difficulty, and the door finally gave way. Inside, on a desk covered in dust, there was a sealed wooden box. Inside it, a document signed and notarized, dated a few months before the death of Sudiadato, leaving half of the farm to in recognition of the one who cared for me with true love, when my own family only cared about what they could inherit. The silence that took over the room was greater than any shout. Donna Almerenda covered her face with her hands. Norberto, with the inheritance already lost in debts, only lowered his head, unable to hold the gaze of the woman he had humiliated for so many years. The case was taken to court. The second will was validated, and Yolanda finally became the rightful owner of what she had already cared for so long with her heart. Instead of expelling Norberto and Donna Almerinda, as many in the village expected, she offered them the chance to stay, as long as they worked the land like any other person on the farm, without privileges, but also without humiliation. Sudiado told me that land without love is worth nothing, she said to Tarcisio. On the night they finally could breathe with relief, on the long veranda of the big house, I will not repeat the mistake that almost destroyed me. Under the command of Yolanda and Tarcisio, the farm prospered again, and the entire village witnessed the transformation of an orphan girl picked up from the mud into a woman respected for her faithfulness, her work, and her ability to forgive without forgetting. This story makes us think about the true weight of a promise. Yolanda could have handed over that key on the first day of threat. She could have traded her faithfulness for a little immediate peace, but she chose to carry, for almost 20 years, a silent commitment, even without knowing exactly what that door held. Sometimes life asks us for patience without explanations, faith without visible proof, loyalty even when everything around shouts for us to give up. And it is precisely in those moments of silent resistance that the greatest victories are built, those that do not come from luck, but from the coherence between what we promise and what we fulfill, even when no one is watching. If this story touched your heart, leave here in the comments which part moved you the most. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next stories. Leave your like and share with someone who needs to remember that faithfulness and patience always have their time to bloom. A strong hug, and until the next story.